Although I've been a witness to 18 years of this Earth's history, I am a student of it. And as a result, I believe that despite our progresses within civilization, we still have a long way to go. Sure enough, globalization is in full effect. A couple days from now, someone will probably be watching this video from a laptop that was mass-produced in China. At the same time, they'll be sipping on a cup of coffee that was imported from Sumatra. The clothing they're wearing is probably fabricated in Thailand, and they'll probably be checking the time from a watch that was from Switzerland. And at the same time, they're probably speaking in a foreign language that was different from mine. The point is what I'm trying to get at is that we're becoming a globalized world. And as we become globalized, we need to address global issues. I'm talking about the real-world problems that we never discuss or have countered. I'm talking about continental starvation, widespread poverty, the looming threat of the AIDS epidemic. I'm talking about deplorable, inadequate educational opportunities, the distribution and contamination of Earth's water supply, or worse yet, the threat of thermonuclear war. These dangers all hang above our head like the sword of Damocles, but these are much more than just allegorical evils. As Edmund Burke, a great English statesman and philosopher, once said, "Evil triumphs when good men do nothing." Good men and women must step forward on a global scale. Now, yes, I have made our image out and our future to look bleak and terrible. But if I believed so, I would not be standing here before you today with what could be a possible solution. But first, in order to reach that solution, we must go back in time to our first examples of interconnectivity. The year is 1919. The world had just finished its First World War, and the entire civilized world as we knew it was in complete ruin. Germany had gone off on a tangent and had ruined the entirety of Europe's infrastructure, and economically, socially, and culturally. But out of these ashes of ruination arose the first intergovernmental organization, the League of Nations. The League of Nations' primary goals and directives were simple: to prevent further global warfare, ensure gradual disarmament of weaponry, and to, of course, engage in humanitarian activities. It was a complete failure. The League of Nations had no legal backing and no affirmative action. Many of its founding members were actually not members itself. The United States' own domestic political motives deprived it from being a part of it. And worse yet, there was even alleged cases of human and drug trafficking, showing that it was unfortunately a corrupt organization. Fast forward roughly 27 years, another world war out of the batch, and a new world organization was created, but this time with much more concentration and dedication: the United Nations. Unlike its predecessor, it had much more affirmative action, more legal backing, and opened its doors to any nations of the world. It has been so successful that it continues on to this day. But the question remains, is it effective? And at the same time, everyone here may be asking, well, why would you ask such a question? In my opinion, yes, the United Nations has been effective, but to a degree. And once that degree drops off, there's many problems that we've been unable to counter. And as a result, it hinders our ability to become more interconnected and globalized. For example, we aren't really combating our world's issues on a global or domestic scale. Take the recent example of Ukraine. It shows two recurring problems that we've been unable to counter effectively in our global world. The first one, denying the people their rights and their voice. The second point, the recurring results that happen as a result of being repressed for such a long time. As everyone knows, Ukraine is at the tail end of a long list of nations which have rebelled against their governments, in particular with regards to the Arab Spring, in particular Libya, Egypt, and Tunisia. You see, these people took the power to better their lives, but at the cost of peace. We need to find a peaceful way to do so while we empower the people. 2, we put too much emphasis on the power of politics. Now, you're probably asking, wait, don't we elect them to lead us? Yes, of course we do. And our politicians are our leaders and our guidance. But they don't always make the right decisions. Their voices don't always accurately reflect our opinions. Take an example of Turkey in regards to its internet censorship. Now, of course, some things should be censored. It's evident. But to the point where you cannot communicate with your family and friends on Facebook or social media websites, that's ridiculous. These resources could be spent somewhere that's important or elsewhere more crucial. This money could be spent on helping those who are starving or providing more educational opportunities for those around the world. 3, with regards to progress regarding global issues, it appears as though we're stagnating. I can't remember the last time I heard the AIDS epidemic was diminishing. Can you? I can't remember the last time I heard that Iran was gladly willing to open its doors for nuclear inspection. You know, you don't even want to get me started on the problem with corruption and starvation in Africa. Our world organizations are good, but they're not that good. Of course, the United Nations has been effective. It has countered some problems, but at the same time, it remains ambiguous on some. Take a look at North Korea in recent times. It has been proven in the last 2 months that the UNHCR has collected enough information to put the entire oligarchy regime of North Korea under the threat of a knife in an ICC court. But once more, the same problem arises again. Where is the affirmative action? What's going to be done? The last time I checked on the news, it appeared as though North Korea and the UN were both aggressively attacking each other, showing that hostilities are only raising and we're not countering our problem, which brings us back to the first point. We aren't combating our problems. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be changed. A point I feel as though needs to be reiterated more than most is that we put too much emphasis on constraints nowadays, in particular, with conjunction to what I said before, politics. Our political leaders are always the ones who make the decisions for us, but in my opinion, it's not always them who accurately reflect us. For example, who was more important during the civil rights movement? Martin Luther King Jr. or Richard Nixon? And under what medium? I think we would all agree Martin Luther King Jr., and definitely for his civil rights movements with regards to social and cultural leadership. Of course, he did have a little help with political movement, but he used his social and cultural leadership to move this. And more important, with regards to Indian independence, was British command more important or Mahatma Gandhi? And under what medium? Once more, a social cultural leader. These are the kind of voices we need to listen to. Another thing I heard is in a TED Talk was Miss Fields Wicker, and she was discussing the problem with leadership's missing manual. And what I mean by that is that we need to listen to the voices of those we don't really think about. Binky, for example, was an Amazon tribal leader. And the only reason he's ever been heard of is because he attended a world summit in Brazil a couple years ago. And what he did was he brought the knowledge from the real world, the civilized world, back to his tribe. He brought education, medicine, and he evidently ameliorated the lives of many. And he brought his feelings about his country, his people, back to the world, the civilized world, so we know about him. And then there's the voices of Sanghamitra. She was an NGO leader in India fighting the threat of HIV, and she still is. But the question is, how many of you know about this by a raise of hands? How many of you have heard of this name? Maybe 1, 2, if that. Nothing, exactly. These people's voices matter. They're the ones we need to hear. They have the solutions. Now, I know I've made this situation sound bleak and dour, but if I believed that, I wouldn't be standing here before you. There's an evident solution. It's just in front of us. It's underneath a thin veneer of doubt and fear. The purpose and the idea of TED is an idea worth spreading, is it not? Now, I believe just beyond the superficial roots, the surface, we could apply TED to a much more global scale, and it could counter our world's problems. But moreover, I think it's not just TED that could do this. It needs to be a mixture of something, a hybrid, something that's never been done before. What I propose is 3 simple changes and three plans of action which put together will change the world. 1, instead of having a small think tank style meeting, we need to create this global think tank style meeting with a UN structure to it. This works in twofold. First off, it works by providing an invitational and an appealing taste to others. And as such, it will provide equal footing for other people. And second off, it works by providing a sort of structure and a rubric for which we can work off with, and providing a format and sustenance from which it'll hopefully work. This now segments into my second point. Minimal legal recourse should be done. What I mean by that is, whenever we have a UN conference or a summit, we always demand that legal action is done. As such, it seems as though we're always confined, and this comes back to the issue of constraints. We're always limited to what we have to do. In the UN, it's like this. You have to follow a resolution or a clause to a T, and if you do not, you're put under the threat of a sanction. We always reprimand as opposed to proposing new ideas and propagating them. This is what we need to do. We need to put the ideas forth, and we need the people to hear them. This is something that's never been done before. It's just propelling the ideas forward, and it's up to political leaders to take them back. And that's why we use minimal legal action, so that it's barely just a touch, so it's uninterrupted and it's uncorrupted. This now segments into my third and probably craziest point. Open the doors to more than just political leaders. You see, what we've always done is that we thought our political leaders always hold the right voice, the right action, they have the right plans. But it's not always true. Like I've said before, Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., they weren't political leaders, they were social and cultural leaders. They have the right voices, they have the right say, they have the ideas that matter. They need to be heard. These are the three ideas that need to be implemented. They need to be put together, and it needs to be tried. Now, there should be obvious constraints to what's happening. Like I've said before, we open the doors to people who wish to contribute, but that's what I mean. We can't just let everyone come to this conference. It needs to be the people who feel like their voices matter, like Sanghamitra or Murali Krishna. These people have the ideas that matter, the ones that we can spread. Another sad thing that I've noticed is that when we come to a problem, we usually look at it under one fine detail lens at one angle. What people need to realize is that when we have a problem like this, we need to look at it from 5 different angles with 5 fine detail lenses. When translating this to my ideology, what I'm simply saying is that we need to listen to musicians. We need to listen to their music. We need to look at artists' artwork and renderings. They can provide more emotion, more sentiment, and more feelings regarding a problem than a politician ever could in a public statement. This is something that, it's just a spark. It needs to be tried. It's never been done before. And these opinions, these voices, these emotions that it will spark has been something that's never been done before, and it will truly change the world in my eyes. The ideas discussed in this conference can be anything. It can be a global or a domestic issue. It can be known or it can be unknown. For example, the recurring civil conflicts and issues within Africa, those could be discussed. Or we can talk about more abstract ideas, such as conformity within such a more globalized world nowadays. This idea, this notion, which I've dubbed Change Agent X, is not just about changing the world and ideas worth spreading. It's about empowering the people. It's about giving them the opportunity, the power, their voice. Once we give people this power, they will have the education and they'll have the ability to change the world for the good. We won't have to leave our power in the 1%'s hand anymore. We can share it. We can all be equal. It can be our new path, our new age, and our new enlightenment. Jose Marti, the Cuban apostle for independence, once stated, "Fortunately, there is the same character in that of the nations as there can be seen in men." I'd like to think that deep down inside of us, every single one of us, there is an innate passion, an innate drive, and an innate purpose, not only to better ourselves, but our nations and our worlds. Like my friend Abdurrahman Karba once said, we have one central purpose, something that drives us, something that propels us forward. Why could it not be that it propels us forward to not only better ourselves, but better our world as a whole? As idealistic as it sounds, all we have to do is believe. It has to be done. Fundamentally speaking, we all share the same problems, regardless of our ethnic backgrounds, our creed, religion, and differences. We are all human. We will all one day eventually die. So do we not owe it to ourselves, let alone our future generations, to make a world where we're empowered, where we're educated, where there's food for everyone, where it's a truly idealistic utopian society? Can this not be done? Nelson Mandela is quoted as saying, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." Change Agent X hopes not only to empower the world, empower the people, but change the world. And it is only up to us to ensure that this weapon is sharpened and ready for the hard work that is ahead. This is Change Agent X. Thank you.